Welcome to Exploring Engineering. I'm Josie. I'm a recent graduate from Beaumont School, and today I'm joined by other Beaumont students and we would like to welcome Kathleen Buse, President of Advancing Women in the Workforce. And Dr. Kathleen Buse is an adjacent professor, a researcher, and a business leader. She currently works at Creighton University, and her research has focused on women in engineering, STEM, and leadership. Her subject matter expertise has developed in leadership and the development of leaders, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the effectiveness of nonprofit boards, and emotional intelligence. As a business leader, her work has focused on helping organizations be more successful through the development of engaged and inclusive work cultures. As a president and founder of Advancing Women in the Workforce, Kathleen works with her team to help employers recruit, retain, and advance women. And some other places that Kathleen has worked, which might be interesting to us, is Sherwin-Williams, Avery Dennison, Lubrizol, and Kodak. Thank you for joining us today, Kathleen. Okay, so we have lots of questions about what it's like to pursue a STEM career, what the day-to-day work is like, what the challenges are like, career paths, and advice you might have for us. Is it okay if we start with where we are right now, school?
Sure.
Okay. Would you like to tell us a little about your academic journey?
Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry. You were asking me. Yes. So I am probably old enough to be your grandmother. So I've had a long career in engineering and then trying to understand how to get more girls and women interested in engineering. So I think that it's very appropriate that Josie asked me to answer some questions today. So I graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 1981 with a degree in chemical engineering, and I had a double degree. It was engineering and public policy. So, Grace and Emma, I know that you mentioned that Emma's doing chemical engineering and Grace is environmental. So it was I was looking at fields in those areas. And I ended up at Kodak, and it was a good place to be. And, one of the things that I want to mention about Carnegie Mellon back in the 70s when I was looking at colleges, I chose that school because it was the only school that I looked at that had any discussion on women in engineering. And it was very rare at that time to be talking about it. As I look back, it was only a couple years before I started at Carnegie Mellon that they even allowed women into engineering and even into that side of the university. And I chose engineering because I was really good at math and science. I also chose it because my father had died when I was young, and I watched my mother struggle with trying to raise kids and not doing it very effectively. She ended up remarrying, and my stepfather worked with a lot of engineers and spoke highly of them. So the combination of knowing that I had the right skills for engineering, knowing that I like math and science, and also the fact that I knew engineering was a field that paid well, and there were lots of opportunities. And at that time, there were lots of opportunities for women. So I started at Kodak. It was a great place to be in the 80s and the 90s. And I even started my family while I was there. I worked in manufacturing. Most of my career in industry, which spanned 25 years, was in manufacturing. At Kodak, I was promoted. I know we'll talk about the struggles later, but I know I was promoted at a slower rate than my male peers. While I was at Kodak, I married my husband, who's also an engineer, and he seemed to be progressing at a lot faster rate than I was. So let's see, I worked in engineering, putting in new equipment, new chemical equipment. I was also involved with replacing a lot of old control systems and putting in all the new computerized things. And at that point, I wanted to understand more about how that worked. And so a couple years after I started at Kodak, I think it was 7 or 8 years later, I got a master's degree in electrical engineering, mostly because I was working on control systems. And so then from there, I took a couple leadership roles and ended my career at Kodak. In an executive role, I was overseeing the technical group that supported a manufacturing area that made emulsions and dispersions. I had 2 kids by then. Sometimes I worked part-time while I was there. Anyway, we moved to Cleveland, the Cleveland area in the late 90s, and I really struggled once I got here. I worked at Lubrizol, then Avery Dennison, then Sherwin-Williams, all in manufacturing or related types of work, trying to replicate my success at Kodak, and it just wasn't happening. And I didn't understand why then. And so I took a year off. By then I had 3 children, and in my 40s, I went back to school. I got my PhD in management at Case Western Reserve University. And there I was able to study, my research question was what allows women to stay in engineering? And so I understand a lot of factors now. I understood what my issues were, and I'd love to share some of that insight with you, especially those of you that are going to be in engineering, and also you, Alexa, because you've also chosen a field that's going to be primarily led by men and primarily led by white men. So you'll have some of the same obstacles that women engineers face. Is that enough on my career journey? My academic journey, I mean, yeah.
So you talked a little bit about discrimination. How did you, was it more like one-on-one, or was it just like underlying like discrimination?
So early in my career, I saw the men who were working with me that I didn't think were as talented or as good as me were getting promoted faster than I was. And when I asked questions like, what do I need to do? It was like, we'll know when we see it, or you just don't fit in the same way he does, or, lots of excuses, but nothing tangible. So I kind of like recognized early in my career that there were obstacles, but we didn't know anything about biases back then, or we really thought that if we worked hard and did, came to work every day with a smile on our face and did everything that we were expected to do, that we'd get promoted. So what we understand now, and what I faced, especially once I came to Cleveland, and I was in more conservative, I think, companies that had less women, and especially less women in leadership than Kodak did. Kodak was a much more, they started recruiting women, at an earlier time, because they recognized that women take more pictures, more photographs than men. So they had a lot more women there. Sherwin-Williams, Avery Dennison, and Lubrizol didn't have as many women. And I think that was part of the struggles that I had at those companies. But what I learned when I went back to school was there's all kind of explicit biases where, as I mentioned earlier, in the 70s, you couldn't even get into an engineering school if you were a woman. That's pretty explicit, or get an engineering job. But the implicit biases are the subtle ones. Do you guys know about that? Is that something that you've learned about in your high school years?
People are nodding their head, yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. So all the subtle things where they look at you and they see, I don't know, cheerleader, or, all these things come into their head, or nurse, or, traditional things that are associated with women, stereotypes. It's actually stereotypes that support these biases. But they don't look at you as an engineer. So you need to understand those biases that are happening and take proactive steps to overcome those. I didn't understand that because I didn't know anything about it in my career. So I think that, you probably understand the numbers. There are some schools like Carnegie Mellon now, I'm familiar with them because I had 2 daughters that went there, actually 3 kids that went there, and they try to keep a balanced male-female gender ratio in their colleges, but a lot of companies don't have that. So some of the schools that you'll be attending have a lot more women than others. I don't know what it is at Ohio State or Dayton. I think Notre Dame is pretty good, Josie, if I'm right about that. But the percent of women in the engineering professions is much lower than that. And what we know from the research is that women drop out from engineering in their 30s, between 35 and 45. The struggles of being able to maintain, to be able to deal with all the biases, and also a lot of women are having families around time. It gets overwhelming. So they tend to go to careers that there's more work-life balance, or there's an opportunity for them to exert themselves. But what we're trying to do in my work, and a lot of other people are working on this too, is change the workplace to fit the needs of women, especially the engineering workplace. I like to say, this is from one of my favorite scholars, was built by men for men and continues to exist for men. And I should qualify that for white men. So I think you'll see that as you continue your progress. I'm not trying to, in fact, I really want you to understand these things, because you're going to be more successful if you understand how to deal with them.
You talked about how you started your family at Kodak, and then they're growing up throughout your career. How did you kind of maintain that work-life balance while also raising a family?
So, I have this really cool story, and I hope you all have a boss like my boss, Dave McClatchy. So in 1989, way before any of you were even thought of, when I got pregnant with my daughter, who's now 33 and started her career as an engineer, I went to my boss and said, I'm pregnant. And I never thought about what I would do with being pregnant, because it wasn't we didn't talk about that stuff back then. And he was like, before he even said congratulations or anything, he just said, please don't leave. He had a number of really talented women that left the workplace because they weren't able, because they just decided when they had kids they were going to leave. I had no intention of leaving, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So what he said to me then is, he said, if you want to work 2 hours a week, we will keep you. So please find a way to continue to work here. So I did. I never worked 2 hours a week. I worked anywhere from 3 days to 5 days a week. And I was able, this was even before we had Zoom, and, even the internet was so bad back then. But I was able to figure out, when I went back after my first daughter, I worked 3 days, and then I was able to work 4 days. And sometimes I worked 5 days. It just depended on what was going on. And I was able to continue that. Even when I moved to Cleveland and I worked for Lubrizol, I didn't do it with Avery or Sherwin-Williams. But what I want to let you all know is that the workplace has really changed, and the pandemic changed it. The more women, especially in engineering, you're going to change it, and you need to change it. And so what I would recommend for all of you is, don't worry about that yet. If you've ever read Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg's book, she says don't leave until you really want to leave. But don't even think about that now. But know that me and many women I know have had successful careers in engineering, in management, in leadership, whatever you want to do, and raised good families. And if you want to interview my kids, you can do that too, because they would tell you that it was probably better that I worked. The other thing that I'll mention, because I work with a lot of women who are still struggling with this decision on whether or not they should be home full time with their kids, or work or do part-time or whatever. It doesn't matter what choice you make as a woman. If you have kids, it doesn't matter what choice you make. What matters is if you're happy with your choice. So the women that are forced to work because they need the money, they're the ones that raise kids that aren't as good, or that aren't as happy, or that aren't as fulfilled in their lives. So be happy whatever you do. And the other thing that's really important for you, and I think especially because you're Beaumont grads, this isn't going to be so hard for you, is believe in yourself and ask for what you want. I didn't think when I was first pregnant to ask for part-time. I was fortunate that I was able to get it, but I really do encourage a lot of women who are interested in working part-time that they ask for it. When you're interviewing, if you have co-ops or if you have internships, look for other women. What are other women in that company? Do they have pictures of kids on their desks if you see them? If that's really important to you, make sure that you go to a place where they support work-life balance. There's a lot of companies out there that do. The other thing that I'll recommend too, if you aren't already familiar with the Society of Women Engineers, They have a great conference every year where they talk about a lot of this information. They have sessions for students, those of you that are going into your freshman year and the struggles with becoming a minority in a school of engineering or whatever, how to deal with the guys that want you to take notes instead of, work on the project that you've been given. There's a lot of workshop at the Society of Women Engineers on how to deal with that. And, also I'm on LinkedIn. Josie has my email and my contact information. If I can help you in any way, if you struggle with some forms of biases that you're seeing in your studies or from professors, let me know, and we'll do everything we can to help you.
So one question we had was, is your job, so you've had lots of different careers, but were they mostly desk jobs, or did you have like any physical labor of being an engineer?
So when I worked at Kodak initially, and actually all through my time at Kodak, and then at Avery Dennison and Sherwin-Williams, I was in a manufacturing plant. So I had an office, but a lot of the work that I did was on the shop floor. And so I really like that. I think that a big part of what I'm good at is solving problems. And a lot of engineers are very good at solving problems. Some are more on the creative side, building new things, but my strength was always solving problems. And so what I really enjoyed about being in manufacturing was there was always a team. And I'm not one that grew up building things or, working with robotics or things like that. But I was able to use my own communication skills, personal skills, what I know it's now called as emotional intelligence, to be able to work with people at all levels. And so I was able to work with a lot of mechanics, pipe fitters, electricians, welders, you name it, I worked with it over time, who taught me the hands-on stuff, and they did the hands-on stuff. And when they had problems, they would bring them to me, or I would know about them, and we'd work together as a team. It also involved the production personnel, the people that were actually working on the production lines to manufacture the whatever it was we were making. At Kodak, it was chemicals. We had big reactors at times that were deemed hazardous. So whenever we did anything with those, we had a big team working on any kind of changes that we made or any kind of problems that we solved. We used big teams. One of my favorite stories is when I was at Kodak, and this was later in my career, probably 12, 15 years into it. And it was right after I had my son. So I was just back from maternity leave. I took a new job, and it was like going back to school, because it was early September. It was right after Labor Day. And I remember it being hot and stuff like that. And we were having this massive problem with one of the products that we were working on. And, we had a big team. I remember being a big team meeting, and we tried to solve it, and we couldn't solve it, but it kind of went away, and we didn't understand why. And then later the film was fogged. So we were taking pictures with film, and they weren't coming out right. They were really bad. And so the problem just went away, and this was a problem that they had for a long time. And so what happened was I was still in that job a year later, and the problem came back, and I remembered that it was summer. And so what we were able to do was work with the team to identify, okay, what are the things that change in the summer? And one of that was our water supply. And we realized that the fogging was coming from some of the water systems that we had. So, that was a really big team effort. And it was a big problem that we solved, and it included a whole bunch of people at a long time. So that's what I really liked about manufacturing. I didn't mind getting dirty. I didn't mind if my hair was messy or whatever. Sometimes it was hard to figure out what to wear, and that's another thing women in engineering have trouble with. If you're with a bunch of men, what do you wear? But that was most of my job. So I stayed in manufacturing as much as I could because I was familiar with it. It was where I started. I never had any issue one-on-one with people. My issues with any kind of discrimination or biases came when it was being around my leaders, my managers, I had one typical engineer manager who never talked to me. Never forget this. And after a couple months, when I realized he never talked to me, because the guy before that I had was really good, but this guy never talked to me, and he's my boss. So I just went and stopped by his office one day, and I said, just want to talk to you a little bit. I'm kind of worried because you're gonna do a performance review on what I've done this year, and I haven't really talked to you much at all. And I said, how do you decide how I get reviewed and how I get a promotion, how I get a raise? I mean, everything is tied into that. And he said, well, I have I have all your emails that you sent me. And I use those, which I thought was a really bad way. So I started sending him more emails. So please understand how you're going to get promoted, what it is you need to do, ask questions. I think things have gotten a lot better since I was in the field. But the discrimination and biases that I saw was more around promotional opportunities and pay than it had to do with working with people individually and especially solving problems.
That's so interesting. That is a great point. Like, what do you wear to work, especially when you're the minority and I haven't thought about that before. And kind of in your response, you talked about another question a lot of girls had was like, how often you get to work with other people that aren't just what you do.
Yeah. So I never had a job where I was given tasks to do without working with other people. And I think maybe it's my personality too. I'm very extroverted. Actually, maybe not as much as I think I am, but I would prefer, I think that, and the research shows this, that teams solve problems better than individuals, and teams are more creative than individuals, and teams are more productive than individuals. So yeah, I was never alone. I think school kind of gives you a different perspective of engineering than what I found in the workplace. In school, you have to do it on your own because you have to show competence, but in the workplace, it's really all about teamwork. And if it's not, then, and if you want that, if you like to work on your own, there's nothing wrong with that. And there are jobs like that. But I intentionally look for jobs that were team oriented. And I encourage all of you to do that too, if that's important to you.
Are there any other like major ways you found that your experience in school differed from like your work experience?
Oh, here's a big one. There's no syllabus. There's no like, if you do this, you'll get this. And so I always knew in school, what I needed to do to succeed, and I made sure I did it. In the workplace, I didn't know. And I mentioned earlier that I had bosses that they said, oh, you will get promoted. We'll know it when we see it. Or I'd ask, why did he get promoted? And I didn't, and just said he was ready for it, but there wasn't anything specific. So that's the big thing, is that it's not as clear what you need to do to be meeting your own goals. So, some workplaces are much better than that. And I know over my time in industry that it got a lot better in some places and not in others. And I still am in contact with a lot of women that work in engineering. And in fact, one I was talking to recently, she communicated to me that she was reviewed for the first time. She was 1 year into her career as an engineer, and her boss thought she was really good technically, but didn't communicate very well. And the man that worked with her, another person that started when she did, had just the opposite review from the boss. And neither one of them, who worked closely together all the time, had any input into the reviews. They both got the same raise, and she was told to improve her communication skills, and he was told he needed to be more technical. And they really didn't understand at all why they were rated like that. So I guess if you're in a situation where you know that you're being rated by one person, make sure you understand what's important to that person, and make sure that you're telling them what they need to do to be to give you what you need to be able to be successful. So that's my biggest difference between school and the workplace, was you don't know what it is you need to do to achieve. And then secondly, the age difference there. You're working with people, and not just age, but experiences and social class and race and country of origin. And I worked for big companies my whole career. And so I didn't see as much of that in school. And I know some of the schools you're going to, like, well, I work a lot with Miami University of Ohio, and they're really trying to get a more diverse student body. So a lot of the schools that we see, they attract a certain type of person and isn't as diverse as the workplaces that I have been in. So that's another difference that I saw. School's a lot harder, I would say. I think that the problems that I had in, maybe it's not, the challenges are different. And what I want to say is intellectually challenging. The workplaces I was in, and maybe it was because I was in manufacturing more than an R&D lab or something like that. I wasn't as intellectually challenged as I felt like I was in school, and that led me to get my master's, and that led me to get my PhD, but it also led me to get a whole lot of certificates. And I know, Josie, one of the questions also that I saw was, how do you keep up in a field that's changing so fast? And for me, that wasn't a problem because I love learning, and probably all of you do too. And anybody that chooses engineering probably loves learning. And I was always seeking ways to learn. Anytime I was offered to go to a class or to get a certificate, or there's a lot of classes that aren't related to universities or colleges that you can go to once you're in industry. Anytime that opportunity presented itself, I went. If I thought I needed a skill, like I mentioned earlier, I was doing a lot of controls work, but I didn't understand how controls worked. I went back to school and got my master's degree in electrical engineering. So I think that you need to initiate that. It's really up to you to decide what you want to understand and then find ways to understand it and be a continuous learner, because this world, it's changed so much in the years that I've been on this earth, and I know it's going to continue to change, and the pace is even more rapid than ever. So to be able to keep up and do what you want to do, but also to be happy, keep learning.
Grace had to head out, but she wanted to ask a question that you kind of just answered. But so we just talked about school to engineering, but Grace would like to know how you went from engineering to management. And was it more of like you just wanting to like learn more and help more people, or was it just like you wanting, to get more skills?
Yeah, I understand, and I think that's a really good question, and it's something that each of you will probably grapple with. Do you want to stay as an individual contributor, or do you want to be a leader? And I felt like, or I knew you know your own skills. And let me talk about my husband, for example. So he started his career as an engineer. He worked at Alcoa and then Olin Chemical, and then he came to Kodak after we got engaged. So we both worked for the same company. While he was at Kodak, he was asked to be a leader, and he took a job as a leader, and he really didn't like it. It was not what he thought was the best use of his skills. He was struggling with some of the personnel issues that he had to deal with. And so once we left Kodak, he actually ended his career at Avery Dennison, and he was there 20 some years. And the whole time that he was there, every couple of years, they would offer him a leadership role and he would say no. So I think it's all about knowing yourself. In my case, I really wanted to be a leader. I thought my skills, especially around engaging in group behavior, and I keep talking about emotional intelligence, and I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I think I'm really good at relating to other people. I think I was also really good at understanding what their strengths were and what they could offer to the team or to the objectives that we had as an organization. So while I wanted to be a leader, I felt a little stifled in the role. So while my male pairs were being promoted to a supervisor, I was first promoted to a group leader. And that was in the job where I was pregnant, and I had a really good boss. But anyway, once I showed that I could be a good group leader, then I was promoted to a supervisor. And then, as I moved in across my career at Kodak, I was able to be a leader in a big organization. And I really did enjoy those jobs. They were really challenging. But the thing about being a leader is you set the rules. And it was really great to be able to do that for myself and for the people that worked for me, because the work, it's not about being in a desk. It's not about being, showing up at work at, whatever time you show up at 8 and then leaving at 5. It's really about what you accomplished while you're there. And I think that I recognize that. And I think the worst bosses that I had were the ones that didn't recognize that it's really about what you contribute, not about, how many hours you're there or what, any of that stuff. So I thought my skills really related well to leadership. And as I mentioned earlier, I struggled once we moved to Cleveland to be able to get into a role like I had at Kodak. And that's why I started the PhD program in management at Case, because I wanted to understand leadership and some of the decisions that had impacted me, and how to be someone who developed leaders, and especially women leaders, and especially women who had engineering degrees. One of the things that I learned while I was in school is the largest percent of CEOs in the Fortune 500 had an engineering degree as their first degree. So a lot of leaders start as engineers. And you think about engineers as systems thinkers, we can put a lot of different things together and make some sense out of it. And I think that's what makes leaders really, really good too, is that they can see the systems and how everything comes together. So it kind of matched my interest my interest and my skills to be in leadership. So that's what I would recommend for any of you. And, again, this is going to be down the line for all of you, but no matter what career choice you have, you're always going to have that decision to make. Do I want to be an individual contributor, or do I want to be a leader? And the best thing to do is for you to decide that, not let someone else to decide that.
I love that idea, like system thinkers. And so much of what you've talked about has put like how we think of engineering with continuous improvement along with like your daily life with personal improvement every day. With how your work contributes with your life, what keeps you motivated, and how do you feel like you're affecting like your society and your environment?
Oh, great question. So I know you probably want me to focus on my early career and also, continuous my career in engineering. So let me start at the beginning. So, the thing, I hope all of you take a lot of pictures, and I'm sure that you do. And it's gotten more expanded with the use of the mobile phones. But at Kodak, we were creating memories, and I was involved with making film. And it was so important to me that people that, that was, you have to be aligned to the purpose of the organization that you're working for. And if you're not aligned, then it's not going to really do much. But that was one of the things I found in my research. I mentioned earlier, my research was why women stay in engineering. They found purpose and, some sense of achievement in moving towards that purpose in their work. And, again, that's some advice I would give you, is make sure you find a purpose in your work. And I'll never forget this one woman, and I never found this. I worked for Sherwin-Williams, but I didn't find this in mine. She worked for a company that sold a chemical that was in paint. So it was something that made it smooth and stuff like that. So she was a chemical engineer. She made this component that was in paint, and she found purpose in, she'd look at a wall and say, I contributed to the beauty of that wall. And, I found that really interesting that she was able to find purpose in that. In my case, I really wanted to make a difference with people and, the world as a whole. That's why I got the degree in engineering and public policy, because I thought I'd work more in the environmental area. That never came to pass for me. But I think that the jobs that I struggled with the most were the ones where I couldn't find a purpose. And I think that's why I went back to school when I was in. So the purpose that I have now, and the purpose that I'll continue to do, is to promote engineering as a great career STEM in general. I've dug into the research. I really understand that, especially if we don't get get girls in middle school interested in STEM and STEM concepts, they're never going to choose engineering as a field. And so we really need to target that age group to go. And so any opportunity I have to do that, I've been proactive being on different committees and boards and working with individuals, especially once they choose it and they find challenges in it, whether it's getting through college or whether it's working in the field. So that's my purpose now, is really to share the research, help women understand how they can help themselves, but also help organizations to be able to change so that they can meet the needs of their underrepresented groups. It is about purpose. So let me just kind of take a detour here and talk about the research, because you brought it up, Josie, and I haven't thought about this in a while, but it's probably important for all of you to know. So I found a couple things that were really important for women to be continuing in engineering. And I considered my career and others' careers to be continued in engineering because I never chose to leave the field and like do nursing or teaching or something like that. I chose to stay connected with engineering. And even if you're a leader in a company that does engineering, I considered that you continued, because you never left your basic thing. You just continued in a different role. So I interviewed women that stayed in engineering and I interviewed women that left, and I compared what they said to me. And the biggest factor that I found between the two groups was this whole idea of self-efficacy. I don't know if you've heard that word before, but it's all about believing in yourself in a way that you know you're going to succeed. So if you believe you're going to succeed in engineering, you're going to succeed. If you think you're going to fail, and a lot of women go in thinking they're probably going to have struggles, they may or may not succeed, they're not going to succeed. But if you go in thinking, I can do this, it's going to be hard, but I can overcome this, you're going to be successful. So that was the number one thing I found. It's all up here. It's how do you use your own brain to set your tone for your future. The second one was this whole sense of purpose. Was really interesting to me, but how did you find purpose in what you were doing? One of the women I interviewed, she was actually a really good friend of mine in college, but I hadn't talked to her in like 30 years. But at that time, she was working in the defense industry, and she was talking about how the communications that she was developing and the hardware that went with that was saving the lives of people because they knew what was going on during military conflicts. So she found a lot of purpose in what she was doing because she was really saving lives. Women that were in biomedical engineering, that was one of the things I heard a lot from them. And I already talked about the women who looked at paint on the wall and felt some kind of satisfaction and purpose out of that. So it doesn't matter how you draw your purpose. Oh, and some women, it was about supporting their family. Because we know engineering pays well, we know it can lead to even more better paying jobs. And that was their purpose in the work, was that they were supporting their families. So how you find purpose in it, that's what you need to do. I think the other one was they were adaptable. Women were able to, if they were in a bad situation, like, I can tell a lot of stories about bad situations in my career. Don't stay in there. Change, get out, ask for help, ask to go part-time, whatever it is you need to do, you need to be adaptable. So those are some, being optimistic and hopeful. That's another one too, that you can actually make a change and that you can do change. One of the things that when I mentor or coach women who are struggling in a role, they think every job is like the one they have. And what I'll tell you is I never had 2 days that were the same, let alone jobs that were anywhere near the same. So it depends on the goals of the organization. It depends on who the leaders of the organization are. It depends on who you're working with, what the problems you're solving, or the designs you're asked to do. It all depends on that. So every day is different. And that's why I really have enjoyed engineering career. I hope I answered some questions through that, Josie.
You did a great job. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Emma or Alexa, do you have any other questions?
I just wanted to know, did you have a moment where you knew that you chose the right career? Like something that was just like, wow, like this is definitely like amazing. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I don't know that I had a moment. when that happened. If I did, maybe I just forgot it. I don't know. But I think that, you know, my first D in college really was hard. That was physics. And you know, you may have heard, I didn't work that hard in high school, but when I got to college, I kind of did the same thing. And my first D was really kind of hard to deal with. And I recognized then that I wanted to do better. And so maybe mine was a negative thing. And I love physics, and I just didn't expect it to be as hard as it was. So I think that I had this moment where I'm like, I don't want to be this kind of student, and I'm going to buckle down and work harder because I really want to achieve this. So I don't know that I ever had like a aha moment, this is really great for me, but I remember a lot of good moments in my career. And I remember when it was the moments when I decided it was time to change jobs or companies, or, you know, even when I made the big transition to get my PhD and then totally change my career out of industry and into helping organizations and women be successful. So I think, you know, my advice, if you want my advice, is to make sure you're listening to what you want. That's another thing that we as women, we tend to do what other people want us to do. I've seen that in my research as I continue to do my research too. That if we do it for other people, it's not as satisfying as if we do it for ourselves. So make sure you understand your own self and what you want, and then that will get you to the point where you can really be satisfied in your career. And don't be afraid to change either. I think that's the other thing I'd like to, especially, you know, any woman out there, any girl, you can change your mind anytime you want, and, you know, be smart about it, but you don't have to stick with the same career your entire life either.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to share before we close up this session?
You know, I'm part of, you know, one of the things I just want to continue to emphasize is that your career is your choice, and how you balance that between the other aspects of your life is also your choice. And make sure that you know what you want, because again, I'm going to tell you, society forces women into certain roles, and they're stereotypical, and they're not necessarily ones that you've been selected to perform on this earth. So make sure you understand what you want, and don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to stand up to other people who are telling you what you should do. Make sure it's within yourself. And if you do that, then you're going to be happy, and you're going to be productive, and you're going to change the world in really positive ways, which we really need right now.
Thank you so much. I think we can conclude the first session of Women Exploring Engineering. Thank you so much, Dr. Kathleen Buse, for sharing your insights and your advice and your story with us.